I'm not performing some jackwagon that I can walk away from and say, give me an Academy Award for that performance. I'm not acting. This is my freaking life.
In the latest season of Sister Wives, Kody Brown shows us a side of himself that's hard to ignore. He dives deep into self-pity, claiming that he's been rejected by his wives. But if we're being honest, this is classic Kody trying to manipulate the situation. He wants to make himself the victim without taking responsibility for his actions.
The failure of the experience that was everything. On my goals. Now failures happen, and I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna put on my big boy panties. I'm gonna get through this, you know that I am.
Forming some jackwagon that I can walk away from and say, give me an Academy Award for that performance. I'm not acting. This is my freaking life.
He talks a lot about feeling rejected, but what's really going on here is that Kody is trying to shift the blame. Instead of owning up to his behavior, he's trying to get everyone to feel sorry for him. This isn't new for Kody. He's always find a way to make things about himself. Let's look at how he handles the idea of reconciliation. When it comes up, Kody shuts it down completely. This isn't about protecting his emotions, it's about keeping control. Refusing to discuss reconciliation, he makes sure he's dictating the terms. He doesn't want to give up any power in the situation, and it shows.
Scrap it or sell it and then just start again somewhere else.
I can't talk about that. I'm sorry, that is so not where I'm at.
I can't talk about.
I cannot even.
I can't talk anymore about reconciliation.
It's difficult some days. There's days when I just feel like the idiot that doesn't know how to let it go.
Rob and I are really kind of in a struggling place.
Probably doing the worst we've ever done in our marriage. It's been tough. It's been tough between us.
Then there is his treatment of Ribbon. Even though she's the last wife standing, Kody's still creating doubt and insecurity in their relationship. It's almost like he's setting her up to fail by constantly questioning her loyalty. This is manipulation at its finest. Kody wants Ribbon to feel like she has to keep proving herself to him.
Kody's feeling a lot of rejection, and so I think he's kind of looking at me going, are you going to reject me too? And so I'm on my toes. I'm having to consistently make sure that he is not sabotaging our relationship. I miss the family experience, and now with this thing with Mary, it's made it even worse and harder. I just keep kind of crossing my fingers that Janelle will decide to stick it out and figure it out.
Which is just another way of him to maintain control. What's even more frustrating is how he tries to blame the other wives for the breakdown of the family. Kody wants to paint himself as the one who's been wronged, but we've all seen how his behavior has pushed these women away. His need for constant admiration and his neglect of their emotional needs have been at the core of their issues for years. Kody is playing a game here. By framing himself as the victim, he avoids taking responsibility for his actions. He's using his family's pain to protect his own image. This episode makes that very clear. We're not seeing a man who's been wronged. We're seeing a man who refuses to acknowledge his role in the family's problems.
There's no resource to help with the idea that I'm still married to a man who's going through divorces.
I love Robin, and she's dear to me, and I respect her dearly. Her telling me I'm still good is valuable to me. I want to give it more credibility, but I've had 3 other people basically blame me. It's just not that easy. It's like I've gone through an entire experience.
Moving on. Kody's manipulation isn't just affecting his relationships with the wives who have left. It's starting to take a toll on his last standing marriage with Ribbon. This season's premiere gives us a front row seat to the cracks forming in what Kody has often called his favorite relationship. Right from the start, we see Ribbon walking on eggshells around Kody. She mentions that she's constantly making sure he's not sabotaging their relationship. Think about that for a second. In a healthy marriage, you shouldn't have to be on constant alert to prevent your partner from blowing things up. Even with Ribbon, who has been loyal to him through all the drama, Kody is creating an environment of doubt and insecurity. It's like he needs her to feel unstable, to keep her under his control. This isn't love, this is manipulation. There is also a moment where Kody openly questions if Ribbon will reject him too. He's fishing for reassurance, needing her to constantly validate him. No matter how much validation he gets, it's never enough. This need for constant reassurance is just another way for Kody to shift the focus onto himself.
Being so angry that I can't look myself in the mirror and say, hey dude, I love you. And I can't go to God and say, hey, help me through this mess. I do. But my prayers aren't the same kind of prayers they used to be when I was like, gee, thank you for this beautiful family. The divorce has put me in, I'll be honest, a pretty dark place. I've spent a lot of time hearing Christine and Janelle berate me in ways that have challenged my resolve for sort of love of myself.
Reborn talks about missing the family dynamic and the camaraderie with the other wives. But realistically, when was the last time they functioned as a family? It's been years. Reborn seems to be mourning an idea of family that hasn't existed for a long time, which raises the question of whether she's being genuine or just saying what she thinks Cody wants to hear. Reborn even mentions how she wishes Janelle would stick it out with Cody, but let's not forget that she has had her issues with Janelle's kids. She's been critical of them and has refused to participate in family traditions with them. It seems like she's saying one thing while her actions showing something entirely different. Cody's manipulation has permitted his relationship with Reborn too. He's created an environment where she constantly feels like she has to fight for their marriage, even though she's the last one standing. By making her feel like she could lose him at any moment, he's keeping her in a state of uncertainty. This season also brings Cody's narcissistic behavior into full view. He openly admits to needing constant external validation to feel good about himself. There is a scene where Cody says he needs external validation to know he's a good person. He even says that Reborn's support isn't enough for him. This tells us a lot about Cody's mindset. It's not about mutual respect or love. It's about him needing admiration, almost like an addiction. Cody's narcissism is driving his actions. He's not satisfied with just one person loving him. He needs everyone around him to worship him. When he doesn't get that, he spirals. This is why the rejection from his other wives has hit him so hard. It's not about losing them. It's about losing the supply that feeds his ego. Cody even dismisses Reborn's reassurances, saying it's not enough for him. He needs a whole fan club constantly cheering him on. He's created a life where his self-worth is entirely dependent on how others see him. When that admiration is taken away, he's left with nothing. And that's what we're seeing this season. He's scrambling, trying to get that feeling of being the center of attention back. Now, let's focus on how Cody's behavior is affecting his children. This season reveals just how disconnected Cody has become from their lives. As usual, he's quick to shift the blame onto others. He uses his separation from the mothers of his children as an excuse for his lack of involvement. But the reality is much more complicated. There is a moment where Cody is blindsided by the news that his daughter, Isabel, is moving. He has no idea that she's moving from North Carolina back to Utah. Cody then tries to justify his absence by saying it's because he's not married to her mother anymore. But this excuse doesn't hold up. Being a father doesn't just stop because the marriage ends. He's essentially blaming his lack of relationship with the kids on the situation rather than taking responsibility for the role he's played in creating this distance. What's even more disturbing is how he tries to push the idea that it's the mother's responsibility to maintain the relationship between him and the kids. It's classic Cody. He's shifting the blame to avoid confronting his own shortcomings as a father. Janelle reveals that Maddie has cut off contact with Cody. Maddie, his own daughter, doesn't want anything to do with him. When this is brought up, Cody refuses to talk about it. He completely shuts down the conversation, refusing to acknowledge the reality of the situation. This is where Cody's hypocrisy is most glaring. He talks about feeling abandoned and rejected by his wives and children, but he fails to see how he's pushed them away. He is also focused on his own feelings of rejection that he doesn't acknowledge how his behavior has affected his children. Cody's behavior towards his kids isn't just neglectful, it's harmful. But refusing to take responsibility, he's sending a clear message to his children that they do not matter to him unless they are feeding his ego. Counting from the effect of Cody's behavior on his kids, this season also gives us a deeper look into Cody's breakdown. It's becoming increasingly clear that Cody is unwilling to acknowledge his faults, and instead, he's spiraling into a deeper pit of denial and self-pity. Let's talk about how Cody reacts when confronted with questions about his failed relationship. There are moments when producers try to get him to open up about why things have fallen apart, especially with his daughter Maddie. Cody's response? He completely shuts down. He refuses to even entertain the idea that his actions might have contributed to the current state of affairs. Then there's the way Cody reacts to criticism. When confronted with the idea that he might have contributed to the breakdown of his family, he either deflects or plays the victim. We see him blaming others, saying things like the wives were the ones who didn't see his humanity. But isn't it the other way around? Cody failed to see their humanity. treating them more like means to earn than as individuals with their own needs and feelings. Kody talks about feeling like he's been excommunicated from his family. But what he doesn't seem to understand is that this isn't something that just happened to him. It's something he caused by neglecting his children, by emotionally distancing himself from his wives, and by making everything about his own need for validation. He pushes his family away. Kody admits he's in a dark place. He says he's struggling with anger and can't even look at himself in the mirror. But instead of using this awareness to change, he seems to be sinking deeper into his own misery, unwilling or unable to make any real effort to turn things around. And then there's his outlook on the future. Kody talks about how he's going to put on his big boy pants and get through this, but it comes off as hollow. He talks about growing up and moving forward, but there is no real plan or intention behind his words.